I think one of the things from my 39 years in the Air Force that the conventional force continually learned from our special operators is how to do a joint fight at a level that is integrated, cooperative, collaborative, mutually supportive at a level. And it's these gentlemen that execute that every day, pretty much in every corner of the globe. So great insights on the joint fight, what they're looking for, and certainly what industry can do to aid that. I think especially in today's world, if you look at where we sit, our ability to integrate across the domains, in multiple domains at one time, to give the adversary challenges that he cannot respond to, that requires TTPs, it requires the joint that these component commanders bring to the fight every day, and it also demands industry build systems and capabilities that have that kind of interoperability and that kind of ability to be integrated. So without further ado, I will introduce, starting off with Lieutenant General Fran Beaudette, Commander of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. We also have Rear Admiral Collin Green, Commander, Navy Special Warfare Command. Major General Vince Becklund, he's a Deputy Commander, Air Force Special Operations Command, and Major General Daniel Yu, Commander, Marine Special Operations Command. So what we'll do is give each one of these gentlemen, we'll start with General Beaudette, and give him a few minutes to make some opening comments across the table, and then we'll come back, and it's really about question and answers for all of you to ask. So,
thanks, sir. First and foremost, I want to thank you and the NDIA for providing this opportunity to link the exceptional efforts of American companies, which we consider America's business and industry special operators, to the men and women of Army Special Operations Command. So as you'd expect here this week, we in RSOF have few to no asks, and I know Jim is used to that. So other than, of course, absolutely everything our men and women need fully functional by the end of the month. And since our number one patrol base priority always remains improving our fighting position, and we're constant innovators, we like to think that, we'll need everything better, stronger, lighter, faster the following day via new ways to accomplish mission. In our mind, using the Talos example, it's not necessarily how do we protect the first man or woman in the room. It's why do we have to have a man or woman going into the room, and is there a better way to do this? Is there an alternate way in which we can attain our mission success and our operational objectives? And fortunately, I'm only half kidding about some of that stuff, Jim. So our ability to continue to outpace today and tomorrow's adversary is critical to all of us, and we can't do it without you. We consider you all our technological rock stars and industry partners. So we're very, very proud of how we're supported by and the inroads we've continued to make with industry throughout the history, the short history, if you will, of our command. That said, it is culturally impossible for us to rest because we owe our men and women every possible advantage against every enemy. We want every fight to be unfair, and we're willing to continue to forge towards this objective, no matter how far it is or how long people thinks it will take us to get there. So it's clear to all of us, we think, that our near-peer competitors are making significant investments in technology and are aggressively employing it right now to erode our and America's military superiority. Their capabilities are on a trajectory that'll outpace the U.S. unless we maintain our comparative and our competitive edge. As a force heavily engaged in combat and more broadly competition each and every day, Special Operations Forces are ready, agile, and lethal. We will continue to deliver under conditions of ambiguity with precision because that's what the nation demands of us. But we must be ready to do more than just survive. We have to thrive in contested and denied areas, and those have to be areas of our choosing. In tomorrow's fight, our men and women will operate in a complex, multidimensional world where information and technology are weaponized at speed against us. Our adversaries will jam our communications, they'll spoof our signals, they'll try to degrade our ability to shoot, move, and communicate, and they will be relentless. We must hide in and excel from plain sight. To stay ahead of the enemy's decision-making cycle, we must sharpen our competitive edge by keeping the latest technology in the hands of our teams, unencumbered by legacy systems and slow processes. We cannot expect success fighting tomorrow's wars with yesterday's weapons or equipment. The secret to our success lies in the hands of our men and women at the point of need. Powered down, agile, specific, and impactful. They are where all of this matters. This isn't, in our minds, headquarters business. This isn't about conference rooms and VTCs and flat panel TVs. It's got to be at the point of need in the hands of our men and women on the X. The technology our operators need now is intuitive, it's mobile, and it's survivable. And it must deliver the right information at the right time to expedite tactical decision making. When it becomes irrelevant, our technology must be rapidly replaceable. If requirements are no longer met by a piece of gear, we've got to move out immediately to the next model or find something else that does. Hypercharging this process will generate the edge required for victory. We cannot afford to drag anchors behind us. The future will not change the core attributes of RSOF soldiers. We will remain ready to endure the physical and mental demands of high-intensity combat, and our men and women will thrive in chaotic complexity. Our mission success relies on individual and small unit proficiency and specialized skills that are applied with adaptability and innovation. So we need American industry and technological visionaries moving out now to rapidly expand and field our future requirements. We need revolutionary ideas. We need creativity. We need ingenuity to empower our collective enterprise. And as you heard earlier, enhance the individual operator. We don't need incremental change measured in ounces. We need our change to be fundamental. Our men and women are agile problem solvers and adaptive leaders. When fueled by your innovation engine, our partnership with industry has the potential to be transformational. Help us empower our ranks to solve problems in ways we haven't even considered. Help us think of what we haven't and see what we can't. Together, we will integrate rapidly changing technology with game-changing concepts out there. So to do so, we think we need to press the limits of research and development through experimentation, and we offer you 35,000 of our nation's finest soldiers that are ready to test it, to break it, to put it through its paces, and provide you timely tactical feedback on whether it works, on whether they need it, and whether it'll make a difference to them, and more importantly, a difference to our nation. So thank you for your relentless support of our Special Operations Forces. Our men and women, I can assure you, are up to the next set of challenges out there, and those arise each and every day, and with your help, they will be supported by the right technology, equipment, and capabilities. That technology, equipment, and capes that we'll need to maintain our competitive advantage against any enemy today and well into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fran. Collin?
Good afternoon. Hey, good to be here, and thanks for your partnership. When I think of partnership, the CG and I were just at Trident Spectre last week or 2 weeks ago, and I really think that's a venue where, industry together with government and the IC, iterating to failure and innovating at speed is a good venue. So thanks for your partnership. It's been an event for 15 years in NSW that's really proved dividends, so thanks for that. I thought I'd start with NSW where we are. We're really, we've had to transform every 20 years since the 40s, so I think we're at an inflection point. There's no shortage of guidance, so my mandate to the force is we need to produce an NSW our nation expects or demands. And that's how do we balance between what I would call the new normal, which is a CVEO fight, but how do we creatively adapt maritime capabilities for GPC and rogue regimes. So really it's, our engine for that is a thing called force optimization, and that's really a transformation from headquarters to edge. At the headquarters, it's really about a reinvestment in wargaming, innovation, and resiliency. And at the groups, we're working towards developing an 06 task force that's able to deploy across the spectrum of competition, crisis, and contingency, but also looking to merge our maritime groups, our Group 4 and our Group 3, for more efficiency in resourcing and innovation. And then down at the edge, at the Echelon 4, it's the advent. We stood up SDV Team 2 in the dry combat submersible, and we're increasing lethality with 7 to 9 platoons. But that vision, the vision I just set out, is called Vision 2030. It's about strengthen, compete, and reform. The strengthen piece is how do we continue to recruit and retain creative problem solvers, digital natives, guys that will think creatively not only in the physical but the virtual and cognitive world, which is really what we need in great power competition. The compete piece, where I'm focused and I need your help, is we need to ruthlessly innovate and develop capabilities for maritime access and placement in the undersea, but also with our combatant craft. And Mr. Smith mentioned those areas, but the things that I'm focused on are signature management, survivability, lethality, and power and energy. And I'm grateful that my predecessors kept their eye on the ball with our combatant craft program and our undersea piece, because that's our unique value proposition to the SOCOM enterprise in our nation, to create dilemmas, to win now, to disrupt, degrade, and do things short of armed conflict that can help other elements of power. The reform piece is really about culture and process and optimization, and how do we leverage some of the things that Mr. Smith said with regard to acquisition. So really for innovation, I'll tell you what our approach is. It's about technology, organization, and process. And really I talked about the investment at the headquarters. But we're small, but we've got good access and placement, I think, in elements like SCO, CCLTF, ONR, SOCOM. Mr. Smith talked about a front door. We're taking more of a move to contact, move to the door, and really getting guys that are creative problem solvers. They're going to move towards industry and other entities of our government to accelerate innovation. I'd say culturally, as a community in NSW, we fast followed very well after 9/11, but what we're trying to do is be first movers. Again, in a GPC type of competition, I think we fast followed pretty well after 9/11 with things like FMV and SIGINT to find and fix. But I think with GPC competition, they have that and more, and we've got to move quickly. We've got to test a little, spend a little, and learn a lot. And I talked about Trident Spectre. The other piece is wargaming and experimentation, and I would ask your partnership there. I think we've got a whiteboard environment right now where creativity is needed at the deck plate. And I think we got a lot of guys that come in with a lot of experience that us old dogs don't have, that we need to leverage, especially in the information, the cognitive and the virtual realm. We're also investing more in RDT&E. Again, we've got to invest in test, especially in the maritime domain. And then finally, you got to know the process, and Mr. Smith talked about OTA and MTA. Those are both things that our innovation director, in partnership with you, is moving out to work with industry, guys that are hungry, that are living on, I would say, ramen and Red Bull, that are creative, to partner with them early to get those things into the force quickly. So I think more of that flexible those acquisition authorities will help. We're focused on, I will tell you, AI for maneuver. It's all about reducing risk to force, risk to mission, organically employed, and sometimes farther from the X. And we're looking at unmanned systems. Mr. Smith talked about that, but UUVs, USVs, how do we partner with the Navy to provide access from the controlled area of the battle space into the denied piece? Also, simply put, AI for analytics. How do we reduce the OODA loop? How do we speed up the observe, orient, and act piece to enable the operator to more efficiently get information and deal with information? And then I think virtual reality is something we're doing to get sets and reps without risk that are fiscally more efficient. I'll just give you an example with a JTAC. We're working a virtual JTAC project where you don't need a dome, you don't need aircraft, and you can efficiently get an operator ready, we're going to look to expeditiously use that. So that's just a little bit of where we are going in NSW. I appreciate your partnership and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Collin. Dan?
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank General Clark and General Collin for putting this together. I think it's important to bring warfighters together with our capability developers at SOCOM and Jim Smith's team that have done tremendous things here, and more importantly, industry. This partnership, this community of interest, more importantly, community of action that comes out of these events are important. It's similar to what we do internal with our fellow components here when we do our operational exchange meetings, which is a good initiative because of the situation that we face today with great power competition and balancing that with which will be a continual VEO fight that I think our nation will have to face and the international community will have to face. In those OEM meetings we do, what we look at is we look at initiatives and funding for those initiatives after analysis of the potential success, do further development, and then rigorously test and evaluate, and then transition those things as quickly as possible. And I think that's why SOF has been so effective of those things, whether we had a formal process, which I think is becoming more developed now because we have to stay competitive in the future. The team at MARSOC has been very, very busy. So before I showed up this past August, they had spent a good year and a half coming together on a vision. Right after the NDS came out, they looked at our value proposition. And when you look at the three tenets that was spoken about earlier by both General Clark and Mr. Smith about lethality, enabling partners, and more importantly, enterprise reform. I don't care if you're as big as DOD or as small as MARSOC, there's ways to optimize. Optimize seems to be a bad word, but to me, optimize is maintaining efficiency or becoming more efficient, rather, without minimizing effectiveness out there. And I think even our organization continues to evolve as we learn more and more based on operational deployments and the partnership with industry, what's out there. So they came up with MARSOC 2030. And the reason they went to 2030, and some would argue that may be too short of a time horizon. When we talk about what we've been faced as a nation, and in SOCOM specifically, because of policy constraints of larger formations going out there, we've been constantly battling forced employment and forced development. Forced development is that 5-year time horizons that the POM normally is based on. We want to get to forced design. And so based on what industry can provide us, you may see a formation completely different 10 years from now, or hopefully quicker than we currently are organized at MARSOC as we go forward. And so we came up with our MARSOC 2030 vision, and it had 4 tenets in there, 4 innovation pathways. Cognitive radar, MARSOC as a connector, combined arms for connected arena, and enterprise agility. And when you look at those 4 tenets, those lines of efforts we're doing, they're in line with what we see the larger operational environment. I think we can all agree that the future is still going to be unpredictable. There's 2 areas that we know, regional competition, which will have global aspirations, and then the instability that we'll face throughout these different regions. And as we look at those 2, the operating environment and what the Joint Staff is coming up with, the update of the CCJO, of the Joint Operating Environment, and what we at SOCOM with General Clark's team is doing as far as future operating environment, how SOCOM fits into that larger joint fight, and how we contribute as components to that, to the GCCs, is very important. So when we looked at those four innovation pathways, again, we're not a platform-centric organization. It's all about the first SOF truth. We rely on our component counterparts to provide some of those platforms we need, but it's about enabling the individual out there, the cognitive radar. And so that's where it's so important for us is when we talk about selecting the right individual with a propensity to be successful out in the operating environment, no matter what they face. Predictive analysis for helping us assess and select individuals into the formation. When you talk about MARSOC as a connector, because we are a contact force, I think SOCOM is, we're going to be out and about. Our global force posture provides us access and placements. We're able to leverage capabilities of our international partners, but just as importantly, the whole of government approaches out there as well, too. So therefore, we'll be able to be that facilitator and enabler and shaping the environment in that space that everyone talks about, because everyone seems to go to the phase 3. It's the competition below the threshold of conflict that SOF is value proposition. And then when we get to that piece, we're there to support the joint fight as they go on and transition. The other aspect of that piece is when we say combined arms for connected arena. You know, we talk about multi-domain warfare, and that's really the new way of American warfare. It really is. And how we operate in that environment. And we have to have operators, hyper-enabled operators, teams, and formations that are as comfortable in multi-domain warfare as we are in the physical. The fire and maneuvers that we all grew up with at this table is the same thing you'll see in the virtual domain, where you're taking information, intelligence, and cyber and other capabilities that are still under development and being able to leverage those in both kinetic and non-kinetic fight as you go forward. And then when we look at enterprise agility, we like to leverage our small size to be able to focus on a problem set and give General Clark as much flexibility to put an organization that is innovative and adaptable and agile for any problems that the nation may face as we move forward. So how we look at innovation and capabilities development is two approaches. One is the top-down approach, which is based on concepts. So no matter what the threat environment is, it's about developing concepts and capabilities that will support that concept. And then the bottom-up approach. Again, getting back to the cognitive raider. We have this process called the RSIDS process. It's the Raider Capabilities Integration and Development System. And this is where you get guys on the ground. Instead of Red Bull and ramen, we're kind of cheap in the Marine Corps, so we use just the gunny coffee, the black coffee to keep these guys awake. They look to their left and right, and no good ideas left alone, and leverage what's already out there. And it's a bottom-up approach. And then we fuse those together with our industry partners as we move forward. So as we look to the future horizons and where we think we need to go, we're looking at those things when you're talking about the electromagnetic environment and the challenges we have. Because, again, being forward deployed, using our axis and placement, signature reduction is very important for us. So when we grew up and talked about cover and concealment, we're talking about digital masking our footprint and being able to communicate regardless of where you are as you go forward. We're talking about organic precision strike so that you have operators out there that can leverage internal capabilities at the individual, the element, the team, the company, the battalion, regimental level out there, so that you can rely on precision strikes that are organic to our formations, as well as leverage the direct support and external support that's out there. Manned and unmanned teaming as you go forward. Artificial intelligence that we're talking about. And I think for us right now, I think we've crested the military crest of the digital environment, trying to use data and also the visual environment as well too for artificial intelligence and incorporating that into how we do that. The other thing that we're looking for as well too is when you talk about mobility, regardless of the environment you're in, both subsurface and surface mobility, and then reliable communications. Subsurface in a subterranean, the subterranean lines of communications, as well as in the air and subsurface as well too. So we look forward to this event and many others that we've been fortunate enough to participate as we continue to evolve the force. So I look forward to taking any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Vince?
General Carly, General Clark, thank you very much for this event here. I'd like to, as tail end Charlie, I'll try to keep my comments short so we have time for your questions, because I know that's what you really probably want to get to. General Webb sends his regrets. He had another engagement in D.C. that he felt obligated to go to, so you got me. I've been the new deputy at AFSOC since about October, and been in the seat and here. Let me start off by just kind of giving you where AFSOC is right now and where we could use your help. You know, we're in the transition of bringing down all our legacy C-130 platforms over the next several years and then standing it up with the new J-model fleet, both in the MC and the AC. By the end of fiscal year 20, we'll have all our U models retired. By 22, we'll have all our whiskeys retired. And then by 24, we'll have all our MCHs retired. And while we're doing that, we're bringing in the new MC and ACJs and beginning the modification process that'll take many years to come. Quite frankly, as we look to great power competition, we'll probably never have those modifications complete because we'll always be looking for new and brilliant ideas from industry to help us keep those platforms, as I said earlier, relevant and survivable as we do great power competition. Not only with the C-130 Legacy platform, but every other weapon system we have is going through some kind of modification process, whether it's airborne mission networking, GPS hardening, sensor upgrades, software upgrades. We're doing that across the fleet with every other weapon system we have as we, again, try to not only go from what we've done very well over the years of counter-VEO to, again, more towards great power competition and looking to use these same platforms that we've had for years and making them relevant in the new domain that we're looking through across the spectrum of conflict. And where we're not modifying, we're trying to grow capacity, especially with our CAA, our combat aviation advisors, and our special tactics, to where we can meet the demand with our allies and partners to go out there and work with them to build their capacity and their capability in this new great power competition. Now, obviously, many of these initiatives are going to help us get better, but they're not going to all come from AFSOC. We're going to need industry to help us think and think in new and innovative ways to be able to help us get to that next level. Again, we're not looking for new platforms, although we will, with the 2030 document, start to look for our next ISR, our next soft mobility, our next precision strike platforms. We want to look to the future. We're not ready to, obviously transform these new J models, but we are starting to look to see what's in the realm of the possible out there and start to make those considerations as we go forward. And we're going to need your help as we move along. In the end, these efforts will help us become more ready, more relevant, and more resilient. As you know, those are General Webb's top 3 priorities for AFSOC as we move forward and work to get that competition. And in the end, let me just end with one thing. I want to introduce our new teammate, Mr. Don Plater. Mr. Don Plater, many of you know, comes from Joint Special Operations Command. He's joined the AFSOC team, and over the next several days, he'll be coming out to all the booths and trying to get to know you. So I would hope that you would take a few minutes to introduce yourself to him and show him what capabilities you have that directly relate to the AFSOC team. And with that, sir, I'll end my comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate it. Okay, folks, so Slido's up and running, so please get your questions asked. If we could on the screens, put the questions up when they come up as we start to generate them. Dan, I think the first question is to you. Is MARSOC going away? Industry doesn't want to start developing technologies and capabilities for an organization that is possibly going away. I don't know where that came from, but...
I don't know, you tell me. Is this mic on? I guess the question is MARSOC going away. I didn't get the second part of it.
It's just saying that industry's not, they just want to know if MARSOC's going to...
I don't think so. I think, obviously, there have been articles out there, and just like anything else, when you go through defense reviews and looking at value propositions, there's some people that have opinions, and they're strictly opinions. I would say that based on conversations with General Clark and his predecessor, General Thomas, and the current Commandant, General Neller, and the future Commandant, if confirmed, General Berger, he's come out public. He's saying the value proposition of MARSOC, not just from a contribution to the SOF community, but to what I would say is the way we fight in joint warfare, coalition warfare. And in our short history, we've come a long ways compared to the vision that then Secretary Rumsfeld had and General Halleck had as they developed the organization, but most importantly, the support from all my counterparts to my right here. We learned a lot based on the hard lessons and the sacrifices of the SOF community, and we'll continue to work together as a joint force as we face the future. So I don't think it's going to go away. And quite honestly, I think there's a potential for growth, too, when you look at GPC and balance and counter VEO. Thanks.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, there's a lot of stealth platforms in the world, SOCOM is a stealth platform. Every one of these gentlemen has stealth capabilities and great power competition. Every single component is going to be key to that. Fran, I think the next question to you is, what is the most important challenge that faces the rotary wing assets? I guess Fran and Vince, you probably, actually everyone probably has an opinion.
From our perspective, it's just continued relevance in light of the NDS requirements that we have from the department and from the boss. So we want to make sure that, and this isn't a knock on Vince, I'm sure he does a great job, but we think we have the best men and women aviators on the planet. We owe them the right platforms to ensure that, their skills can be put to the best use. So wherever that X or Y happens to be, we have to ensure that, the systems that we have are not only viable today, but are going to remain viable and provide us every opportunity to get where we need to go and how we need to get there at a time of our choosing. So ranges, distances, we work closely with our service. We get tremendous support from the leadership here, and so those are some of the things that we're closely nested with. So our Army Special Operations Aviation Command headquarters, Brigadier General Al Pepin and his fantastic team there, I mean, they're switched on to all this, and it's something they put a tremendous amount of effort into to ensure for us, latest, greatest, most survivable, most viable, to advantage our operators in any way possible. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vince?
Good for that question here. Really, we need the help within our PED enterprise, process, exploitation, dissemination, really trying to get artificial intelligence and machine learning to help the operators that are, looking at the FMV, full motion video, to try to be able to identify and do a lot of the things that take human tasks right now. If we can get the machine learning to do that for us and let them do the higher cognitive things to help the operators that are not only on the ground but in the air, to define that environment, that's where we really need that AI and machine learning to help us out.
That's a great lead into the next question. Anybody that wants to answer, I think everyone probably has an input, and that is, where are you trying to leverage AI and machine learning in improving system readiness and warfighting capability, actually?
Yeah, so where we're using AI for readiness, I'll just use the example of the virtual reality JTAC. It's really about how do you get sets and reps without risk. How do you get cost-efficient training? I talked about the intensiveness of JTAC training and how you can alleviate some of the heavy requirements of schoolhouses and domes and aircrafts, and you can get sets and reps for a JTAC more efficiently. And again, just to reiterate, strengthening who we're recruiting, we had an SO operator that had a gaming degree that came into Naval Special Warfare that you talk about bottom-up driven innovation. He was the one on his weekends that came up with the idea of a virtual reality JTAC trainer that I think will help our readiness more efficiently. But it's how do you cultivate those young digital natives that are creative to provide a forum for their talents. So I think that's one thing we're trying to do is spot and assess people like that and then cultivate it within process and organization. So marry up technology, process, organization with talent.
For us, 160th in particular, I think, has made tremendous headway in diagnostic maintenance analytics for the airframe. So it's buying, again, our men and women additional time to focus on other tasks. It's synchronizing and saving resources for us, and it's making us more effective writ large. My sense is we need to industrialize that across broader aspects of our fleet, particularly when I look at new systems that we're going to field. How can we take the tremendous work that they've done in this space and give ourselves value in other parts of the fleet? Not that we're not experts at maintenance, but I hearken back to my experience as a battalion XO, and I think I found the motor pool twice. So we've made a lot of progress in that time frame, but I think there's a lot of advantages in the space that we'll be able to gain from this line of work. Again, that the vanguard of that, if you will, has been the 160th, and we're very, very proud of the work that they're doing and how they're able to gain efficiencies and allow us to take the money then that we save from that and apply into other readiness parameters that make us more lethal. That's a good question.
Yes, sir, if I could, it's the same thing that Collin was talking about in training. Right now in Air Education Training Command, they have pilot training next where they're doing a lot of virtual reality training. We'd like to move in that same direction with AFSOC with our 2 FTUs that we have, the 19th SOS and the 551st. And as a former 58 SAL commander that had all the training for AFSOC there at Albuquerque at Kirtland Air Force Base, every bit of training that you can take out of the aircraft, if you think of it as a pyramid, if you can take that training out of the aircraft and move it into the sim, if you can take that training out of the sim and move it into virtual reality, if you can take it out of there, so we don't have to have an aircraft so guys can go and how they learn to pre-flight an aircraft, if they could do that on virtual reality, you free up those platforms to actually do real training that needs to be done in those different platforms. So every time we can move this training down to a lower level, we actually free up the higher level of training so crews can actually go fly the aircraft and you can validate training each next step you go up. And really we think that's where virtual reality is going to take us, allow us to be much faster and much more relevant when we get those air crew through and get them faster.
Very good.
I'll just close on this particular topic. Similar to our counterpart, virtual reality, we've invested through our service as well too, and it's something that SOF has been using, gunfighter gyms, and it's able to do reps and sets for the cognitive raider going through different situations to enhance that decision making. When you talk about the OODA loop, being able to decide and act much quicker as you go forward. But from the perspective of enhancing readiness, one of the shortfalls that I think all of us have is those other individuals and specialties that support us, and there's a huge demand for intelligence, and I think as you look at what artificial intelligence does to help us do the analysis, to get the information quickly to action, that will give us I think a reprieve in some of the shortfalls we have of personnel. And to me, artificial intelligence and machine learning, we've talked about PED and what it's done already on the visual and the data mining that goes on, and it's really statistics at a hyper speed that computing allows us to do. And to me, that will facilitate when you talk about a global network, reach back, and more importantly, when you're out forward on the edge, and you have all these organic systems, when you're talking about the Group 2, Group 1 of today, maybe the Group 5 for us tomorrow, that is organic to the element that's out there, and then be able to take that information without this huge formation supporting it. I think there's a lot of potential there. That's it.
Great answers. Thanks. Next question, I think, goes to one that is near and dear to Jim Smith's heart as well, and that's the fact that we've had evolutionary technology improvements for the past 2 decades, but as we look at great power competition and the move into the future, the key revolutionary technologies advance that you, for your particular component, would want to see in the next 15 to 20 years. I think evolutionary is the normal progression, obviously, and disruptive revolutionary technologies. Is there anything that you see out there from any of the components that is one that you'd really like to see advanced? Volunteers?
I'm a SEER graduate.
I think we hit it with AI. I would say, it's man-machine teaming. How do we embrace that and employ it at speed? And I think we're doing that. For me, it's what's my value proposition to the Navy in distributed maritime ops? How do I use AI, autonomy with unmanned surface vehicles, unmanned undersea vehicles? How does it enhance efficiency working off of submarines where you may need more manpower intensive to run a dry deck shelter? Maybe AI will help us reduce the number of operators we have that can run that so that we can that we can grow the tooth piece of it. So I think AI, I know it's the buzzword, but I see so much potential for efficiency, for training, readiness, and then for us in the maritime, it's not about taking the man out of the loop, but how do you enable him? And we talked about that. So I think there's so much potential, but we've got to move with speed with it.
For us, it's, we just need to be invisible out there. And so as the enemy technology continues to advance and makes it more and more difficult to either obfuscate what we're doing or, frankly, as I mentioned, hide in plain sight. You know, it's a discussion about risk. So how do we best protect our men and women going forward? And so, you know, whether it's 5G technology and the accrual of, you know, recognition features that allow people to figure out who's doing what to whom out there, we have to hide in that space. We've got to be electronically invisible. We have to manage our signatures, if you will, in all counts, whether it's how we get somewhere or what we do while we're there. So the risk discussion to me is absolute protection of our men and women at all times in a way that's that allows them to accomplish mission. So it's not that we're risk averse, but you know, as technology burdens and the threat ties together what they can do and what it means to us, whether it's off the shelf, you know, UAS that our folks have had to contend with over time, or you know, they tie together the ability to see out there more broadly. You know, we have to hide in plain sight. So we look at everything from RFID tags that, you know, help us maintain accountability on the systems that we have and the vulnerabilities that come with those in the training base, which we're able to shake out in the, you know, combat training centers, the DIRT CTCs, if you will. But we're learning a lot from cyber, from EW, from, you know, potential gaps and seams and our ability to protect ourselves. And so, you know, in 15 or 20 years, hey, I just want all of us to be invisible out there, be able to execute an operation whenever and wherever we want to, and have the lowest possible risk out there. So we bring everybody home, and, you know, we're continuing to turn at a pace that allows us to attain operational effect. So small ask. Got plenty of time, though, 15 years.
Yeah. Cloaking devices, right?
Yes, sir. I would say for us, it's in our airborne mission networking. You know, right now to work it with the hyper-enable operator, not only to be able to develop systems. Many of our platforms right now, we have temporary solutions, and they're not very integrated across our platforms. We're looking to develop more permanent solutions across all the platforms that not only can talk down to the operators on the ground that give them the vision of what we have, but to be able to talk up to the larger conventional Air Force platforms up there, and even to space and cyber to be able to move that data back and forth. So we don't have these large fixed structures that would exist anymore when it comes to command and control, and that information just can flow through the networks and not be somewhere that it's, you know, consolidated. I think that's where we really want to see some revolutionary leaps.
The only thing I would add is not only the signature manager, because I talked about before, our force posture is going to be out there. We're going to be in the contact layer. So when we do decide to come out and support the evolution, it's being able to make sure that you have the communications. You know, we put all our stuff as we look at innovation into the bends of being able to sense, shoot, and communicate. And so just like every platform should be a sensor, shooter, communicator, we think every platform individual operator is the same way. And so when you are uncovered to the point where you're going to move into conflict, that you're able to emulate and disguise the footprint and where you are, as well as leverage technology that you can actually disrupt enemy formations without waiting for the larger conventional force to come out there. That's not inside the contact layer. So those capabilities out there, which I think there are some already, and some things that our industry is working on in order to support that.
Thank you. Great answers. And it is. I mean, those are all industries got their work cut out for them, so they got to get busy. The next question is a great question. I think it's near and dear to General Clark's heart. And I actually, maybe we can get an update from Vince, reference where the Air Force is going as we move forward. That is, what role a light attack aircraft play in expanding capacity within AFSOC? And then do you have any update on where the Air Force is headed?
All right, so what I do is I'd start out, you know, really it's an Air Force program. You know, the most recent that is Dr. Roper has signed the milestone decision authority for a fighter bomber PEO within the Air Force that really is going to give them the authority to buy 4 to 6 platforms right now. And within that, they'll continue with phase 3 of experimentation on these platforms. What that also allowed us to do with an AFSOC is to be able to do combat aviation advising. So really the missions that we're looking to use the platform for are really 2. One is with our combat aviation advisors to continue to go and work with willing partners that want to not only purchase but fly these aircraft to be able to build capacity. The other one, as General Clark used in his testimony, is, within SOCOM, there is a need for this platform to really go out there and do austere CAS. And that's really to be able to provide our ground operators with not only information, but protection. In some of the places that we can't get some of the more conventional Air Force platforms out there to assist in the places that you would expect to find SOF aviators. So as we've always said, this is an additive capability. We want to stay in step with the Air Force because this will be a service common platform that we'll look to use MFP $11 on to be able to SOFize, but we want to stay in step with the Air Force as we go forward.
Very good. Excellent. Next question is, what's your investment in artificial intelligence and where do you think we'll be in 5 years? You may have mostly answered that. Is there any additional comments that people would like to make on where you think you'll be in 5 years?
I'd just throw out one ad for us where it's been, I think, especially helpful, and that's, critically important to us is make sure we have the right men and women in the formations. And so, the ability to look at data out there in the aggregate, again, against a service, and by codifying the skills and attributes of potential recruits and what we are looking at from, the currently in the Army force, we've got, support that helps us vector in, and we can tier potential recruits by category. And we couldn't have done that without, an investment in AI, if you will. And so that allows us to effectively target recruiting in a way where, we've got those recruits are maybe had not considered a career in special operations before that, but, the specific outreach allows us. And then, frankly, they will, based on the, parameters that we can put in, they'll have a higher propensity to be successful in, our respective assessment and selection profiles. And so that's a space that, we've started to invest in, but I think there's potential out there to make sure that, and as the boss mentioned, again, in MISO and the PSYOP spaces, as we're really starting to develop our information warfare capabilities writ large, I think it's somewhere where we're going to continue to look, whether it's in effects or, who are we communicating with and how are we doing that, what's resonating, what type of advantage are we gaining from what it is we're trying to do. So I think we're just scratching the surface, if you will, in the information aspect of AI and how it's really helped us pour through a tremendous amount of data and vector in our limited assets and resources, troop to task analysis, if you will, on who we need to engage and who we need to talk to. So we're getting great advantage from it.
Anybody else want to comment? Okay. Next question, and to all of you, as SOF component commanders, many of our industry partners here provide service support. Is there any discussion you'd like to talk about with your relationships with your service support industry partners and what they can do or should be doing to better support you?
Hopefully, if you're talking about the Navy service, my relationship with the Navy.
I think we're talking more about services companies that provide support to you downrange or other places where the IAPs, the DynCorp, the Vectrus, those type of.
You're in the fatal funnel, man. Keep talking. Hey, so we spend a pretty significant amount of our TOA on service support contracts, if you will, and they're tremendously important to us. In fact, they're critical in our ability to generate readiness, which equates to lethality for our force. And so, in general terms, we buy time for our men and women, and/or we buy expertise that makes us better. And so we're thankful for the relationships that we have out there, the right coaching, teaching, and mentorship that often comes from the level of expertise that we're able to, to contract through service support, if you will, makes a difference for our men and women out there. And so for us, it's critically important to what we do. It's something we spend a lot of time focused on, and we're in a good place with it, and we get delivery as advertised, if you will. It makes us better as a formation when we have less time to prepare, either in between combat deployments or in generating readiness capabilities that potentially have atrophied over time, and or we need more help on, then we're focused a little bit more on that. And then sometimes we have a little bit more time. And so the flexibility built in there for the ebbing and flowing, if you will, of what we need and how it enables us as a formation has been important. So we're in a good place.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
No, the only thing I would add is that, I talked about the new American way of warfare, multi-domain. I think we couldn't go to war without service contracts out there. I mean, in reality, it's a vulnerability for us as DoD. So as you look at the future, that's probably something that is at risk as well, too, because I don't think we can sustain that long term. And this is where I think you have to leverage partners, people that are, have sovereignty in the area we go to provide those contracts for us. So I think there's probably some room for efficiencies in that area, but right now we couldn't go to war without it.
Very good. Vince?
Yeah, sir, I'd say we have an excellent relationship. We get a lot of contract logistics support just for our platforms. We fly a lot of unique platforms that aren't service common in the Air Force, and we can't do the maintenance. We can't keep those platforms ready and relevant without those relationships. And we have, again, outstanding support. And we do it all over the world, not only at home station, but many times these CLS contractors go to the places that we're deployed all throughout the world and are side by side with our airmen as we go down raid. So, again, outstanding support.
Very good.
Yeah, if I could, now that I understand the question, I'll for us, the complexity of our craft is growing, both in the undersea and our combatant craft. In the days of where a SWIC could fix an outboard motor or work with a rib are waning. So and then couple that with the Navy's manageable distribution inventory where we're not getting combat service support. We're going to have to, we're looking at creative ways to increase service and contract support for our more complex craft. And that's just a reality of, I think, the resourcing environment. And so we appreciate it. And that applies to dry deck shelters, dry combat submersibles, and our combat craft medium, which is a little bit more complex than our old school rib. So we are going to have to rely on your support, so thank you.
Great, thanks. So probably about time for one more question, then any closing comments. So Vince, to you, and actually anybody else that has input on directed energy technology in support of the SOF mission. I know there is a big push on the AFSOC side and any other push on the directed energy.
General Heidholt kind of started this with the whole directed energy for our AC-130. General Webb, came on board and was really looking to make sure we could get a viable program and get it funded. Over the last year, we were able to do that. So we're looking to start to do some developmental testing with a 60-kilowatt laser. And we're hoping to do that on an AC-130, and we're looking to do that first testing on the thing by the end of fiscal year 21 into fiscal year 22 to see what the viability of that program is. So it is moving forward now, really through General Webb's kind of dogged trying to make sure it got funded not only through the Air Force but SOCOM and all the other agencies that could help us with that. So I think we will see something come to light, and we really look forward to that technology coming on board.
Great, thank you. So, folks, I'll offer any closing comments. Fran, any closing comments you'd have for the crowd as we get to the end here?
Thank you.
Gotta like that. Collin, anything else to add?
No, I'll just, I'm trying to impart a sense of urgency in our formation and a partnership and a willingness to fail with innovation and a willingness to bring people together. And again, I'll put a plug for Trident Spectre where you've got all the right people in the room. It's not really a bog sat. It's really an iterative innovation venue because of the culture of it, but the partnership and the willingness to iterate and get solutions at speed. So I think we need more of that moving forward in partnership with you. So thank you.
I just want to say thanks, and we've got our subject matter experts here. They've got our technical objectives to help you kind of shape where you can help continue to support us as we move forward. I'll just give you an example. We've partnered with industry on behalf of SOCOM and was kind of the lead on the lightweight medium machine gun. And what industry has done is, I just got an update. They've reduced the weight to less than 17 pounds, extended the range almost double, and a Marine or Raider shooting that thing in the offhand position. That was probably unheard of 10 years ago. And so as long as we continue to do that, I think this is a great forum to outline those kind of requirements. Thanks.
Vince, anything to close with?
Yeah, sir, I would say, just obviously aviation is a very complex, industry there, but what we want to do is not make it complicated. We need to be able to do these modifications and get them done quickly so we can get these capabilities out onto the battlefield, especially with near peer. So I'd echo what Mr. Smith said. We really want to be able to look at, hey, we don't want a 5-10 year program. We're looking to be able to do this much quicker and be able to get these platforms modified and get the warfighter what he needs.
Great. So, General Beaudette, Admiral Green, General Yo, General Becklund, thank you very much. Appreciate your being on the panel. And folks, thank you very much. Thanks for being here.